Hi, Roxanne. Thanks for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Nate. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this project of yours. So my name's Roxanne, or you can call me Roxy. I'm currently a postdoctoral fellow at the University of British Columbia. I studied bone loss in astronauts during my PhD, and I studied biology. I'm Canadian, so I did my PhD in Toronto and my undergraduate work in Victoria, British Columbia. So I'm back on the West Coast and happy to be here in nice, sunny, beautiful British Columbia. Apart from that, I've been involved with a lot of volunteer work through SEDS Canada. I don't know if you're familiar with SEDS,
Oh,
Students for
yes,
the
SEDS.
Exploration and Development of Space, which I actually shared your project with everyone within that organization because we're a really good bunch of students in Canada who are passionate about space, and a lot of them are from a very diverse background. Me personally, have been trying to get more folks outside of engineering into the space realm because I do see it, as more than just engineering in general, and especially now, we need people from all sorts of backgrounds. So that's just kind of me in a nutshell. Want to be an astronaut in the future. I want to go to the moon. So I definitely gravitated to your project. It's just super cool, and congrats on doing this.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite a self-development project too, having to force myself to interact with people. I sometimes get really shy, and I'm like, no, I can't miss a day. I like got over 600 now, you know. So
So you haven't missed a single day yet, hey?
I haven't. I'm afraid if I
Wow.
do, it'd be like just the world, the universe will cease to be.
Well, congrats on that. That's really quite an achievement.
So, I mean, Canada has astronauts, and I'm sure they're concerned about bone loss. Do you have any type of interaction with the Canadian Space Agency?
I did an internship with them, a student internship in 2019, but it was completely unrelated to bone loss. It was more just looking into what capabilities Canada should have for the upcoming Artemis missions, in terms of rovers and landers and all these sorts of things. I don't, so my PhD work was actually funded by the Canadian Space Agency, but even though that was the case, I didn't really interact with them other than brief reports that they read about my work and how the progress is going, and etc. But yeah, it is really fascinating because the Canadian Space Agency has a lot of interest in health sciences right now, particularly now. And as you pointed out, we do have Canadian astronauts, some of which are medical doctors, like David Saint-Jacques was the most recent one up on the International Space Station, and he is a medical doctor. And we've had previous astronauts as well, like Bob Thirsk, who are really pushing hard on getting Canada positioned as a leader in deep space healthcare. So I feel like my background with my bone loss studies during my PhD positions me really well to potentially work with them in the future, and that's definitely a possibility. We'll see what kind of opportunities spring up next, what kind of funding that's going to happen. It's always an issue of funding. You know, in Canada, out of all the G8 countries who, you know, have a space agency or invest in space, we are the ones who invest the least per capita. And yet we put together amazing projects like the Canadarm2, Dexter, you know, all these crazy things that we've done it on basically a shoestring budget. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And especially a lot of Canadians, they, you know, don't even know about the incredible things that Canada has done in space. But yeah, hopefully it's going to move more towards healthcare in the future. Maybe, you know, healthcare robotics. Speaking of Dexter and the Canadarm, we could maybe apply some of those sweet robotics to do remote surgery or those types of things. I hope so. It'll be cool.
It will be, yeah, for sure. And you know, you mentioned shoestring budgets and the ability to accomplish so much on a shoestring budget. And I have a crazy theory I want to run by you just to get like a third person or you know another person's perspective.
Yeah.
Um, so I think you actually can accomplish more with a shoestring budget because everything's focused on a particular goal. and it doesn't attract these people that kind of like feed off of a big budget, and you're left with just the true believers.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And that's one of the struggles, at least in my view, that the US has with NASA, subcontracting out to the big aerospace companies. And they're so fixated on just these big grants, and they feel so secure in their work because they know that they're going to get the big grants, that things don't move as fast. So yeah, I totally agree. When you have a very tight budget, you tend to prioritize things better. People tend to work harder. That's just how it is. So yeah, maybe that's the case, that we need to encourage shoestring budgets. I don't know if that's a good strategy or not. I'm definitely not an economist, but it could be a potential future strategy.
Yeah. But and the other thing is, whenever I talk to people, just random people off the street, like at Starbucks or, at the mall or wherever, and I say, hey, did you know that we're planning to send astronauts to the moon in 2024 for the first time since 1972? Universally, pretty much, like it's like 8 to 2 type of thing. They have no idea. And I was curious in if it was different in Canada, the idea of sending the first Canadian astronaut around the moon, has that excited Canadians to a greater extent than maybe people in the US?
Oh, geez. I would say we're probably on par in terms of just percentages of people who actually even know about these things. So I would hazard a guess that we'd be roughly the same. And it's shocking to hear that, because you said you're based in Houston, which is sort of like space central, Houston, NASA's Houston Center there is one of the biggest. So I'm shocked that so few people know about it there. In Canada, yeah, it's pretty bad. And yes, as you pointed out, we do have we've slotted a Canadian to be part of I think the second Artemis mission or something like that. So definitely a huge achievement for us to be partnered with NASA on that, and to get an astronaut there. Yeah, it's very unfortunate, though. I don't think many Canadians know about it.
Yeah, and Houston's a huge area. We have like 4 million people, and the Johnson Space Center is like on the south side. I'm way up on the north side, and I think most of the people in my neighborhood are closer to oil and gas than they are to space. So um, they probably could tell you the details of like pipeline projects and stuff that I have no idea about. So
What's the latest fracking technology?
exactly. Why we really shouldn't be worried about climate change and more stuff like that.
Yeah, it's understandable. I mean, some of these things are a little bit closer to home, right? So it makes sense that space is something that if you don't have an interest in it, or you're not following it, it's just not in the public eye that much, especially now with so many crazy things happening in the world. It feels like um, political destabilization, and just all the stories that are happening around the world, and the pandemic, that space sort of takes a back seat. But we don't want to raise the next generation that way, right? We want to put space in the forefront. Canada's tried to do that. One of our big aerospace companies here, MDA, McDonald, Detweiler and Associates, which I think is no longer a Canadian company. I can never keep track, but it originally was at some point. They tried to put this campaign together to say, "Don't let go, Canada." That was the slogan, right? Don't let go, Canada, because we've had such an incredible past few decades in space that we don't want to lose that momentum. And they had like bus ads. They had the whole sort of decal on the buses in Ottawa, Ontario, with the "Don't let go, Canada." They had like TV commercials. It was honestly the first time I had ever seen anything related to Canadian space sector in sort of like the public ads and things like that, public view. So that was the only thing. Hopefully we can maybe do some more of those types of campaigns to put it more in the forefront. But yeah.
Yeah, I think people are like, what's in it for me? What does that have to do with my life? I'm never gonna go to space. I'm not Jeff Bezos or Richard Branson, which kind of brings me to what's happening this Wednesday with Inspiration 4. And I was wondering what you thought about that.
I'm really excited about Inspiration 4. So there's a Netflix series, which you've probably watched. There's a new episode out tonight, actually. I'm really looking forward to watching it. The whole mission itself and what it stands for is, to me, just shows that we're actually moving forward and actually making progress in the direction that we want to. And the crew, it's amazing. Cyan Proctor, I've met her and spoken to her before, and we have mutual friends. And it's just so incredible to see someone that actually going to space, like a dream that she's had her whole life, and to finally be able to do it and to be part of some cool experiments. There's a group that's working with Cyan, and I think the other members of the crew that are going to be doing some really unique and cool life science experiments during the mission, testing out new techniques. So a lot of things like miniaturization of swabbing techniques or blood draw techniques. So things that you can do in a smaller space with smaller equipment that's more usable in space compared to, these bulky things that you see in laboratories here on Earth that you can't necessarily bring into space. So they're testing a lot of these things during that mission, and I'm just really excited to see what they come up with.
Yeah, that I mean, I don't think, well, maybe episode 3 and 4 will go into a little bit more, but I've heard talk about them doing science experiments, but
Mhm.
the details, I haven't heard anything about that. So this is the most I've heard so far about the swabbing techniques. But how did you find out about that? Maybe there's someplace I should be looking.
So this was I know one of the researchers who's working on this, so she was telling us a little bit about the work that she's doing. But I don't know if it's beyond those very broad explanation and details, how much of it is actually public yet. Maybe it'll be in one of the episodes that are coming out in the Netflix series, or maybe it'll be announced later in time. But yeah, I'm not too sure exactly where where the information is regarding that. I can maybe look into that later and let you know, though.
And that brings up a kind of a broader question about experimentation at like International Space Station as an example. I mean, it seems very vague about the benefits we get from it. I like even like people in specific fields, it seems like they're forced to just talk about generalities. Like even something as specific as crystallography with like proteins. You would think there would be like a list of proteins that could only have been grown to the and sufficient size to do X-ray crystallography on them. But I've talked to people in that field, and they can't name any.
Yeah, I mean, if you like, crystallization in space is a really cool topic, but obviously you can't bring a whole X-ray crystallography machinery up there. And I couldn't even tell you, what kind of proteins are ideally made in space, or what happens to them. Basically, all crystals, I think, just generally behave differently in microgravity than they do on Earth. But again, definitely not my area of expertise.
Yeah, no, indeed. But I guess I feel like us as space advocates, I should be able to like have like a top 10 list, that we're constantly updating of discoveries made on the International Space Station. And I just feel like that list should be a lot easier to come up with than it has been.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what the commercial companies, the SpaceX and Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, are doing, is they want to democratize the science a little bit more and make it more accessible, and that will draw in more expertise, draw in more people into the project, and hopefully the just rate of discovery will just be exponentially increased that way. And I think that's how it should be. Not just that, but all science, I think, should be a little bit more accessible. Myself being a scientist, it's really hard to see some of my work even just being paywalled. So I really do hope that a lot of the research that will happen in these commercial flights in space are going to be more accessible to the general public so that people can both just understand it better and maybe work on it without having to actually be a employee of SpaceX or whatever. Like I was saying before, I'm Canadian, so I can't even work in the US really under ITAR restrictions. So if I or anyone else in the world could be part of that research somehow by making it more accessible, then that's amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, just coming back to the moon, what do you think about us going to the moon? What's your thoughts?
I love that we're going back to the moon. So when I was younger, before my college studies, it was all about Mars. Everything was about Mars, and I was really fixated on that as well, just like everyone else. The prospect of sending humans to Mars. But then it seems like everything shifted back to the moon, and then it kind of makes sense. Honestly, the whole thing just makes a lot more sense that we would take our baby steps and just go to the moon first, validate the technology. It's so much closer. People don't realize just how drastic a difference it is to get to the moon versus to get to Mars. It's like 4 days to get to the moon or 7 months to get to Mars. So the challenges are completely different. Just feeding astronauts becomes a tremendous challenge when you're talking about deep space. But when you're only going to the moon, yeah, the resupply missions are still possible to some extent, right? So you still have a bit of reliance on Earth, which is nice because I think we still have so many areas of technology that still need to be developed and tested, like the healthcare element where, okay, now if the crew has some serious medical emergency, what's going to happen here? We need more AI, we need more robotics, we need to completely remove any sort of reliance on healthcare here on Earth or the surgeons that work at NASA or the doctors that work at NASA. So definitely a lot more work to be done. But I think by going to the moon now, we learn as we go, we test out the technologies and then progressively expand to Mars one day. So I love the idea. I'm 100% for it. And if someone told me that I was going to the moon tomorrow, I would 100% say yes.
Did you sign up for Dear Moon?
I did. Yeah, I definitely, any opportunity that arises where people want to give me a seat on a future mission, I will take it. I don't know what the status is on Dear Moon, actually, if the crew's been selected or not. I don't know if you have info on that, but haven't really been keeping up to date so much on that. So
Well,
obviously I haven't been selected, I guess.
they did make an announcement a few weeks ago that they have selected a pool of candidates that they're going through the physical part with, and that the people that are going to select from are going to be the results of that. So
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's nice to know that they're making progress on that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you mentioned about technology and healthcare and all this related to the moon. I think a lot of people envision like the astronauts being sort of like on ships out at sea. But in reality, the astronauts are more like passengers. And anytime they run into a problem, they just call down to NASA and say, hey, we have this trouble. And then you got all these engineers down here that figure it out and kind of tell them what to do. That kind of breaks down whenever you start having more and more communication delays, and you start having to have that skill set needed on site.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of
That's actually a really good analogy, the comparison to being out on a ship, like the early explorers going to Antarctica or the Arctic, or even the ones who came to the Americas. They had no one to rely on. They just had to rely on themselves. A lot of people died during those missions. So yeah, obviously, you need, it is a little bit important to have that team behind you that supports you. You just can't do everything yourself. And that's why I say we really need more AI and robotics to maybe take the role of of ground control a little bit, so that we don't need to rely on them as much. So yeah, that would, to me, that seems like the most logical strategy, at least going forward.
And one of the reasons I'm doing this project is there is this moment when a new technology that's transformational comes on the scene, where you sort of have the skeptics and optimists are kind of wrestling, and both have equal evidence to sort of, like flight, for example. I'm sure there were people back whenever Wright brothers were there with their, 20-second flight going, hey, we're going to have airports and people are going to be traveling all around the world. And other people are going, that was 20 seconds and one person and he was the specialist. And and I feel like you have the same thing with regards to space settlement and space travel happening right now. Like those of us can see like Elon and Starship and envision what that transformation is going to be. A lot of other people are completely unaware of it, and a lot of people would be very dismissive of it. So, but I'm kind of curious in where you see it taking us, like 500 years from now, 100 years from now, whatever time frame you want. But where do you see humanity going?
Definitely away from Earth. I'm definitely on, the I guess of the opinion of Elon and Jeff Bezos, who dream of a world that's or humanity that's spread out across the universe, right? Or within our solar system at the very least, right? Because if something really dramatic and tragic happens here on Earth, that we still have these outposts of humanity that can keep humanity alive, essentially, no matter what happens to us. So we shouldn't put all of our eggs in one basket on this one planet that we have. And although this, like Earth will always, I think, be humanity's home and like the cradle of civilization, I think that there should always be those outposts out there exploring and figuring out the really complicated questions. So the ones about where we came from, what even is the universe, we need to go and actually see these places far out beyond the solar system to figure it out, right? So that's the key here, is we want to answer the big questions, we just have to go. So, I mean, in terms of timeline, hey, that we're talking probably centuries, millennia for that to happen. But I think that just seeing the progress that's happened even in the past 20 years since the shuttle era, it's incredible what has happened even in the past 10 years, how much progress we've made. So if we continue to go at this pace, I think that it'll probably come faster than we think, if barring anything really, really dramatic happening.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know we only have a few minutes. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about or any questions you had for me?
Well, I'm definitely curious to see how many more Canadians that you've interviewed, and I would love to get more Canadians part of this time capsule that you're building here. I think it's really great to get a perspective even beyond just the US. So how has it been exploring different cultures and how they think of space? And yeah, so what kind of different perspectives do people outside the US have?
Well, there's kind of a filter in terms of who I'm able to access, so it's not like just randomly stopping somebody at a bus stop. So being able to engage them means that they're already somewhat positive on it. But I would tell you, there are people in Egypt in medical school who want to go and be space doctors, like kind of your area of research. And there's people in Pakistan and India and, Chile and all these places that are very excited about space. And I think in some ways, they may be even more excited than people in the US, just maybe because it would be kind of pushing the envelope for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And especially countries that are their development, like I'm thinking India in particular, they're that country, the development is just exploding. It's just incredible to see the progress happening there. And yeah, I've seen so many Indian students, folks from India who are just super excited about space. And it's great to see that. I'm really excited for what ISRO has in store. So their space agency in the future. I know they're planning some missions and even some human spaceflight missions in the near future. So it's just amazing to see all of these new space agencies coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a really, I mean, if we could all work together, we could achieve so much.
Yeah, and on that note, actually, I kind of wanted to bring that up because it sprung to mind a recent book that I read called For All Humankind. It's by a Canadian, Dr. Tanya Harrison, and Dr. Danny Bednar. So they interviewed people from all around the world to get their perspective on the first moon landing. So I think it has a lot of ties to what you're doing right now, because now it's kind of like the second chapter of that. So I definitely encourage anyone who's watching, and Nate, if you can read that book, For All Humankind by Dr. Tanya Harrison. I think you'll see a lot of parallels with what you're doing here. And it's a great little inspirational book, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you very much. I definitely will read it. And I see that we're right at time. So thank you again. And I hope you can send more people my way. I would love to interview a lot more Canadians also.
Yeah, definitely. I'll do my best to spread the word. Thanks so much, Nate. This is a great opportunity. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Roxy. Okay, take care.
Bye.